If you haven't registered yet, please scan the QR code displayed on the screen. While we wait, do visit our social media pages to learn more about Varsity Hackathon 2025 and its upcoming activities. Be sure to follow the official Varsity Hackathon accounts, which will be shared in the chat box. Thank you.
Before we get started, please take note of the following housekeeping rules. 1. The attendance and feedback form will be shared at the end of the session. 2. Please keep your microphone muted at all times during the session. And finally, we encourage you to turn on your camera and use the virtual background provided by our team during the photography session. You may download it from the link shared in the chat box.
Additionally, we encourage you to interact with us throughout the session by using the chat box or reaction features to show your presence and support. However, please avoid sharing any inappropriate comments in the chat box. Thank you for your cooperation.
Greetings and a very good evening to everyone. Welcome to today's workshop, Prototyping 101, Transforming Ideas into Business Reality. My name is Jason.
And my name is Chongkin, and we will be your MCs for today.
This workshop aims to equip participants with practical skills and techniques to transform their ideas into potential market-ready business realities.
Ladies and gentlemen, without further delay, let us give a warm welcome to our speaker of the day, Mr. Muhammad Adrian Wong. Mr. Adrian is a Senior Business Development Manager at Thundersoft Malaysia. He's a pioneer MMU ICT graduate who is passionate about technology and innovation. As a technopreneur, he believes in enabling better lives to drive both impact and revenue. As a seasoned software and hardware integration specialist, his expertise in generative AI, machine learning, the metaverse, web apps, and mobile apps. With extensive experience in developing cutting-edge solutions, he also mentors aspiring developers and entrepreneurs, fostering a vibrant tech ecosystem. For the past 25 years, he has been a digital enabler, working in content creation, iPad apps for autism, custom software, hardware integration, gaming, video production such as Splices TV, and e-commerce such as Zone Salmon. Please feel free to scan the QR code and follow Mr. Adrian on LinkedIn to learn more about him.
I'm sure everyone is excited to hear from our speaker. Let's warmly welcome Mr. Muhammad Adrian Wong as he begins today's session. Mr. Adrian, the stage is yours, and you may share your screen now.
Thank you, Jason and Shonkin. Good afternoon, everybody. Assalamualaikum to those Malay Muslim viewers. Let me share my screen. Yeah, oops. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Oh, wrong slide. Sorry. Okay, let's just start again. Yeah. Okay, so thank you for attending this session. In line with the eHack hackathon, this topic for prototyping is actually quite apt. So basically, from prototyping to a business, from an idea, normally you have to actually go through these stages. It's not necessary, but it's actually a nice to have, right? So what exactly is prototyping, right? So basically, prototyping is neither a minimum viable product nor is it a proof of concept. Right? It's basically something to actually validate your ideas, right? And so how this is done is normally you do a lot of iterative. I think there are some participants that are not muted. Yeah, so there are some ways of doing this, and I'll run you through as well as a short sort of a workshop in a way that I'll guide you all through in terms of how to do it, right? So basically, when you have an idea, regardless of whether it's a hackathon or a business that you want to run, it's always nice to actually do a prototype, right? So a prototype is something that can be done both digitally and in a hardware perspective, or in a service industry. Let's say it's a restaurant or whatnot. Then you have the flows and the logistics of running a business, and that's also prototyping, right? And so think of it as something that you do as a trial, or an example where you do and then you get feedback from various stakeholders, right? So that's why it's very important, what they call as, you don't want to be jago kampong, meaning to say you don't want to be like a hero in your village, because you need to know who your stakeholders are, and you need to get buy-ins on your stakeholders, right? So that's basically validating your idea, right? Okay, so moving along, these are the different types of prototyping, right? So we'll go into a few of them today. One of it is actually paper prototyping. As you can see on the top right side, you can see basically that's a mobile app with a lot of yellow arrows. So paper prototyping comes from the word paper. So basically you draw on pen and paper, and these are the sketches that you draw just to get your ideas off your head and onto a piece of paper, right? And that's the only way you can actually see things in a bigger perspective, right? So today in the IT world, they call this wireframe. So basically, you don't draw the entire picture of the app. You don't draw the details. Basically, you're just drawing wires, right? Like a stickman. And so it's easy to communicate because a lot of people are very visual, right? So in order for you to communicate your idea to your teammates, like for instance, if you have a developer for front end and back end, you basically need to communicate that in a very visual way so that everybody's on the same page and they don't go off building things that you don't need, right? So the idea in doing paper prototyping in terms of sketches and wireframes. So I'll go through some of the wireframe softwares as well. Now, the whole point of a wireframe, we've got a few videos which would explain the wireframe, is actually to do a few things, right? Specifically features and functionality. So if you're building an app, like I'll give you an example of Airbnb, right? So as you know, Airbnb is similar to Booking.com and the rest of the hotel bookings, except that Airbnb is your private homes that you become the host, right? So I'll give an example in terms of Airbnb and another example in terms of finding a problem in farming and finding a solution in that, right? Now, in order for you to do a wireframe, you need to specifically do functionalities and behaviors. Like this is something that a lot of people disregard at a very early stage of development because they tend to start coding and then they don't realize that they might be coding things that are not needed, right? So how do you do this is that you if you do pen and paper, what you can do is just draw sketches in terms of stickman, and then you can cut out like name card size or a little bit bigger, like the casino cards that you have, and then you can move them around, right? You can move them on the table and then see whether this screen will go up before this or this screen will go before that, right? So displaying certain information on the screens, if you want to cut it in a smaller, like for instance, if you look at the corner here, you can actually cut the keyboard and have the keyboards moved around in a smaller subset of a card. Right? But of course, nowadays the wireframes have apps like there are a few apps that are available that you can actually just draw your wireframes and then share it and then have your teammates actually comment on it, right? So to take home this particular slide, the important things to do is basically to actually come up with functionalities, then make sure that the certain information is there, and then to prioritize your content. Because the last thing you want is someone clicking 3 times just to do something on the app, right? So that's what you don't want to do. And then everything is black and white, meaning to say if, for instance, if you're building a software for a client, you want everything black and white and you want to sign off from the client, right? So meaning to say, if you're designing something and then an app for a client, and the first time when you see them and they're okay and they sign the purchase order, the first thing you want to do is come up with something like this so that the expectation of the client and the expectation of you delivering the application is on the same page, right? So, and then what happens normally is that when the client is happy with the user interface as well as the flow, then you can get a sign off on the application, right? The other 2 or 3 is basically digital prototyping. So digital prototyping is similar to wireframe, except that you use digital software to actually do your prototypes on, right? And then there's also the 3D models. These days, the 3D printers are so cheap. I mean, it's relatively cheap in terms of, you can get one for like 600, 800 ringgit, and then you can actually print the design out and actually hold it in your hands, right? So this is also prototyping, and then you can go through a series of prototypes. Meaning to say you can have different versions, and then you can test. Like for instance, if you're building a car, how they do it is they 3D print it or they sculpture it using clay, and then they run the car through a wind tunnel, and then from there you have the ability to actually test the structures of the car and the shape of the car, right? Excuse me. The other two will be physical prototypes, so like hardware models. Hardware models also can be 3D printed, but these hardware models can be more in terms of hardware. Like let's say you're building a prototype for a Raspberry Pi or a Arduino, and you want to actually build a board, but you're not ready to build a board. So basically, you need to build hardware prototype. So that's also prototyping. And then the last one is basically more a customer journey. So more towards a service industry. As you can see on the bottom, you have a customer journey, or what we call as a customer story, right? So basically, when you have a restaurant, or let's say a service industry like customer service, for instance, you need to know where your customer will be landing and exiting, right? And then how long they stay in the whole process if you want them to stay longer. And then you have different flows in terms of the back end and the front end, and what they can buy, what they cannot buy, and whether or not, like for instance, it loops back in terms of errors and stuff like that, right? So that's the many different types of prototyping that exist, right? As you can see, there are many types of prototyping. So some of them are done in Figma, InVision. I think Canva can also do it right nowadays. But basically, what you can see is on the left hand side is basically very simple line drawings that are drawn on a mathematics book, right? Just to get the box right and the frames right, and then you can have all the features and functions, and then if you don't want it, you can erase it or you can throw it away, right? So that's the low fidelity prototypes that you do for sketches and wireframe. Then if you want to do mid and you don't want to use an app, you can obviously use like PowerPoint or Word to just draw boxes at the same time. But there are a lot of free available apps like Figma and InVision that you can actually use, or Canva that can actually use to actually draw this prototype. And then the last one, which is the high fidelity, is normally the interactive prototypes. And so when I say interactive prototypes, it's basically prototypes that you can actually build and actually have clickable hotspots on the particular screen, right? So this is done very simply by just clicking and then dragging to the next screen, or dragging to the next box that you want to activate. And then once you load the application and then press play, then normally you can just click it and then you're good to go, right? So these are some of the paper prototyping which have gone from paper to software, right? So this is a short video. Just have a listen and then I'll continue again.
All right, so this is a demonstration of the digital wireframe prototype of the Airbnb travel planner. Here we're on the travel planner homepage. You can see here the 2 days we have booked with them. Inside of those days, you can see the different reservations that we have. So we have surfing lessons at 8 a.m. and food reservations at 7 p.m. I want to add an event, and I feel like I want to do some scuba lessons. So we're going to select a scuba experience, come down here, and we're going to see times. Here you can see that from 8 to 9, we already have surfing lessons. So Airbnb will block that out for us, telling us that we've already have something planned. So let's do 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Let's just jump straight into it. All right, let me choose that time, and then it will appear on your itinerary, and you're able to then adjust these, edit your times, book new things, cancel, all in this travel planner feature.
Okay, so that's just an example of what a wireframe looks like. I think this particular app is Adobe, but you can basically get the idea of how they do transitions as well as clickable links, right? So please feel free to explore this later on. So, okay, why is it important, right? So the reason why prototyping is very important is because you want to basically number one, communicate your ideas. So basically everyone will have ideas, and to find a a level where everyone is on the same page is rather difficult. So rather than just building the app and then realizing that at the end of the day, this is not something you want, and then you've already hard-coded all this code, and then there's no way of shifting the flow, right? So it's always wise to actually do, a decision tree, something like the bottom, in terms of like when you start, where do you go, you make decisions, do you place options, what do you do after that, right? So the more squares that you see in terms of the orange and the purple will annoy your users even more, right? So the whole point of having prototype is you want to put yourself in the user's perspective, right? And then you want to also know that if there are more than 3 clicks or 4 clicks to actually buy something, then people might drop. And so in e-commerce, when you do that, you got to really think carefully in terms of how many clicks that someone needs to do before they can check out an item, right? And so as you know, development cost is expensive and time is money. So to reduce the development risk, prototyping is always nice. Of course, it takes up time, but at the end of the day, you can actually communicate your ideas better to your other users. So basically, what you can also do is number 4 bullet point is basically to get feedback from other users, right? Now, the reason why you get feedback from other users, because normally each platform will have a minimum of 2 or 3 different users, right? So for instance, if for Airbnb, there is a user which is the one that books the houses and the rooms, and then there's also the owners, which owns the rooms and the houses, right? And then the third one is basically the back end, which is Airbnb and customer service from Airbnb and so on and so forth, right? So there's at least 3 different users. And so when there are 3 different users on the system, you got to understand all 3 of them, right? But for this case, for the sake of discussion, we're only talking about the front end where the user books the hotels or the rooms that are available, right? So then again, you will have not just one type of user, you may have 2 types or 3 types of users, right? So then you have different user stories, and these user stories normally come with the flow, right? So the flow is there are some people that will load the app and they just want to take a holiday for the weekend and they want to try something new and anywhere, right? And so that's the user where he doesn't have a fixed location or date. Then there's also the other user, which is the user that just wants to book a room and get out of the app, right? So he knows exactly where he's going, what dates he wants, and how many people that he wants to book the room for. And so when you have this kind of user stories, and these are something that, when you're building a system or participating in a hackathon, you need to basically identify who your users, which I'll come to the BMC later, which is a business model canvas, and then you can identify who your first customer of your first stakeholder is, right? So some of the common challenges is, like I mentioned, it's going to take time, but this is essential because this time that you spend on prototyping will actually save you more headaches when you go ahead building the whether it's a software or a hardware or a service industry prototype, right? Of course, you need to budget in your time constraints in terms of your development as well as your system requirements, as well as getting buy-ins and your surveys and your prototype, right? So again, the reason why it's wireframe is because they don't want you to spend so much time in high fidelity. And if you know that you're going to click here and go there, then you don't have to even do the interactive ones, right? And point to note here is that you shouldn't be overly obsessed to be perfect in the sense that you don't want to do prototypes that are so perfect that you end up wasting so much time and then you forget about building the app itself, right? So don't be a perfectionist for this one, right? So basically you have, let's say, 3 teammates or 5 teammates in your team. You just need to dedicate not budget but time. And so basically, if you want to do that, you need to be able to dedicate 1 person or half a man or half a day to actually do the prototype. Or if you want to collaborate and do the prototype together, then by all means, nowadays the softwares do multi. And so it comes to when you have an idea and you want to actually express it, so you have to have actually very clear ideas. So you can also prioritize your functionalities, right? Like for instance, very simply, if you do equivalent in terms of an Airbnb app, you basically need to prioritize a few things. Basically, if you want an app, you need to prioritize calendaring, bookings, and taking into account the user and the owners, right? So these are the things that you need to prioritize, because at the end of the day, if you're gonna participate in a hackathon, you have very limited time to build, and you can't build the whole application from ground up. And so that's why you need to prioritize what is important and what's not, right? So the core functionalities, or what I normally call as a secret sauce, needs to be built in, and that needs to be expressed in your pitch very clearly, right? And the balance between being iterative and making a perfect prototype, right? So normally, when you do software development or prototyping, normally you will see and hear something called the waterfall. And so the waterfall is always top down, and then once the water falls from the top, then the next person catches it and then goes on doing the other task, right? But these days, development is now very agile. A lot of development teams do stand-ups almost every day, and they do development very iteratively. So basically, what they normally do is they have stand-ups almost every day, and then everybody would explain their blockages and what they're building for the next day. And then the next morning, again, they will do a stand-up, so that whatever they build throughout the day, they're on the right path. So similarly, in terms of agile development, prototyping is also very iterative, meaning to say it's not carved in stone. You can come back to it anytime, and you can iterate your design and test the flow all the time, right? Maybe a show of emoticon hands in terms of who has used Airbnb, so that know that you're not listening from afar. Anybody use Airbnb before? I'm sure you guys have, right? Yay. Cool. So about half of you guys? No? Okay. You gotta check it out. We normally like Airbnb because it's very homely, and it's bigger in space for the same price, right? As you can see, the logo of Airbnb is obviously an A, but it stems from people, places, the very famous icon, and then love for the places, and then A, right? And then that's how they got the latest logo today. And so Airbnb is no different from a hotel booking app. It's just that it's private homes, and you basically live in someone else's home. But having said that, there's a video of how they iteratively build Airbnb, which I'll share in a bit. So I'm going to use Airbnb as an idea for the case study today, because it's a real life success story. Of course, it's a startup that they used a lot of validation in terms of their website. So if you Google Airbnb and how their websites look like, 5-10 years ago, they basically did a lot of A/B testing, and then they had multiple names for Airbnb. They didn't come up with Airbnb. It was previously, I think, bed and breakfast and stuff like that. So I'll show you a video of Airbnb very quickly.
How Airbnb started, or how 3 guys went from renting air mattresses to a $10 billion company. 2 guys in San Francisco couldn't pay rent. So they thought, why not rent out 3 air mattresses? They made a simple website, a blog with maps. 2 men and a woman showed up paying $80 each. After guests left, they thought, this could be a big idea. They invited a former roommate, Nathan, as a co-founder to build the site. Then they launched at South by Southwest and got 2 bookings. Brian, I hope it's not the only idea you're working on. So in 2008, they sold Obama O's cereal right before the election for $40 a box. They got their first money, $30,000. In 2009, they got $20,000 in first funding from Paul Graham's Y Combinator. They were making $200 a week for months, not growing much. Finally, they realized photos of places were not so pretty. So they went door to door in New York City and took photos by hand of listed houses. 1 week later, they were making $400 a week. Finally, they started growing. But they were still rejected by famous VC in New York City, Fred Wilson. Then Barry Manilow's drummer rented out an entire house. Aha, they thought. Then they raised $600,000 in seed round from Sequoia Capital. 2010, they raised $7.2 million. 2011, $112 million from many investors, including Ashton Kutcher. And finally, 2014, Airbnb is valued at $10 billion. Now, don't you tell me you can't do a startup.
Yeah, so basically if you watch the whole video, basically what it's trying to say is that they didn't give up. They went from, from zero to, they went from -0 actually. They didn't have money to pay for rent. And so they actually offered their houses, and fortunately they were in a very high, I won't say high end, but it was a high occupancy hotel place like San Francisco, and everybody needs a place to stay whenever there's a conference, right? And so the take home from the video was basically they needed to raise funds, they needed to prototype, and they got some co-founders to prototype. And when they were not making money, not enough money to fund whatever they were doing, they had to, make money somewhere else and then use that money to fund whatever they were doing because they believed in it. And if you realize, when they iterated not just the website, they also iterated what they, in terms of what they wanted to do. And then they finally figured out that actually a lot of places have very bad photos. And so that's what they did. And they took photos of places that basically they went door to door, and then they took photos of places that owners that didn't mind renting out a room or a whole place that they had extra, right? And as you can see, you don't only iterate and prototype your application or the way you do business, but you can also prototype a lot of brand names as well as your logos and stuff like that, right? So as you can see, the transitions, I couldn't find the websites that they had previously, but I'm sure it's in the archive somewhere. But basically what it means is that you can prototype almost everything, not just an application. You can also prototype logos and stuff, right? So basically, steps to build a prototype is here. You basically need to define the problem. And so if you take the Airbnb example, I think your VHAC this year is fintech as well as a bit of agri. So like for instance, for fintech and stuff, you need to identify the problems. Like you have to understand what the user pain point is. And so normally the way to identify problems is if you have your own problem to solve, right? So the boys at the Airbnb obviously had a problem to solve, which is how do I pay rent? And I need to stay in a place. And so why don't we just get some people to pay us to stay in our place as well, right? So that was the problem they had. They couldn't pay rent, and they identified their own pain points, and they basically went out to the market and then went out to. So South by Southwest is actually an event similar to events and roadshows that you see in Malaysia for the startup community. Like for instance the ones that Cradles and Merantis run. So basically, after you identify your pain point and you conduct market research by going on to the ground and talking to enough people and saying like, I have a house, would you like to rent, things like that. Like for instance in fintech, like if we don't want to do money and you want to do credit cards or you want to do e-wallet, then you got to ask at least like 50 people to 100 people, like, is it okay if you leave your wallet at home? Do you want to actually sign up on an app? So these are the start of market research that you can actually go down to the ground, or you can actually create Google Forms to actually have people register for surveys and stuff. But nothing beats actually having a front-facing person to talk to and to figure out what their problems are, right? And so when you have many problems, similar problems from many different people, then you know that you have, an idea or something to solve, right? And so the user needs is also the same thing. Basically, everybody needs something, and if you can fulfill that need of someone, then you basically can actually make some money as well as build something, right? And then what you do is you sketch your idea. A lot of times, if in the startup world, there's always something called the paper napkin, and always the ideas comes to you at the weirdest time. And normally people grab the nearest paper, which is always a napkin or a tissue paper, and then they start writing and scribbling on it, right? So there's a lot of instances of the startup community where they actually wrote and signed on a napkin, and that's where co-founders are made and companies are built, right? So basically, the same things that I mentioned in terms of the wireframe, in terms of sketches and storyboarding. So basically drawing out things or using an app like Figma and Vision, right? And then you build a prototype, you test it, and you iterate. So basically, prototyping method is there's no hard and fast rule in terms of what you want to use and how you're going to use it, but basically find something that works for you and your team. And if they are willing to learn, then someone can just guide them through and then maybe collaborate on the prototype. And then what you do is what we call as send it out in the wild. Of course, the backdrop and the themes look like a desert and the wild, wild west anyway. But so basically sending out the links to either your classmates or your friends and families, depending on who your stakeholders are, and then asking them to use the application, right? Or if you want, you can sit down beside him or her and then let the person use the application and see whether it makes sense to you and next person who is using it. And if it's too hard to use, then you basically need to go back to the drawing board and then redo the prototype and then come back to the user and say that, this is the updated version, and then what do you think, right? And so then you're basically taking notes at the end of the day to see whether it makes sense for everyone, right? Okay. So this is the one that I was mentioning to you. I think you guys have heard of what WH questions are, right? So basically the WH questions are basically what, when, which, who, and how, right? And then the rest, right? So basically, the business model canvas, which I'll show you what it looks like. Yeah, sorry for the white screen. Basically is a canvas. I think you can Google this and download free canvases. And so we call this the BMC. The BMC is obviously something that helps ideas flow from a lot of parties, right? Anyone has done BMCs before? Maybe a raise of hands so that I know. Nobody. I see 1, 2, 3. First time, okay, never mind, it's okay. Inshallah, we'll go through this. So no worries. It's not a very common thing, but I'll explain this to you in the previous slide. Right? Okay, so basically, if you're building an idea, you basically need to ask yourself these few questions, right? Like, how does this prototype fit this business that I'm doing, right? And then who is going to use this, right? So again, the stakeholders, right? So like for Airbnb is the people renting, out, and the platform, right? And then what is the problem you're trying to solve? So these are very basic questions, and you need to answer these questions whenever you have an idea, especially in a hackathon, because again, you don't want to be, like Jago Campo and then shots in the and then after that you do something that nobody needs, right? And then you don't win, or you don't even get to the finals. I mean, at the end of the day, when you join competitions like this, for the experience, you also want to, compete and also come up with a good idea, right? And then there's the who can help. Obviously, the who benefits is the stakeholders, and then who can help will be basically your teammates, right? So like you have to identify who your teammates are and what their strengths are at the same time, right? And then where is your money coming in, or where is your money going out? So that's the revenue streams and cost structure, right? So take this as a challenge, not just for developing apps, but everything in life in general, right? As long as you can answer all these WH questions, then you basically covered all your bases. But that's your bases that you've covered, right? You have not covered your stakeholders' bases, or you have not covered your other clients' bases. When I say bases, is like baseball, like you got 4 bases that you need to cover, right? So like, how does your prototype fit the business, right? So you have to actually physically do something and then figure out like, if this flow, does it solve everything, or do I need another flow, right? And who benefits from this, right? Like for instance, if it's fintech, are you targeting the rich? Are you targeting the poor? Or are you targeting the marginalized and the unbanked, right? Or are you targeting the foreigners? So if you look at you look at the cellular, like the mobile industry, for instance, you have the Celcoms, the Maxis, and then the DGs, right? And then you have the lower tier brands like the XOX and the probably unknown, but the MVNOs, which are the virtual operators, right? And you know for a fact that the Celcoms and the Maxis are always postpaid, and then the DGs are always prepaid, and then the XOX are always foreign workers and the students and stuff like. And then you have last time the prepaids for all the operators, right? So in essence, the customer segment and who benefits is basically your stakeholders. So you can build a product for everyone, but it's very tough to do that, right? Because you need to be all encompassing, and then you have to basically build a product for everyone. And so you have to initially niche it to a particular segment, right? And so you have to identify, and you have to be very clear and laser focused in terms of your customer segments, right? And then for that customer segment, right, what problem are you trying to solve, right? Okay, so like, let's give you an example. Like for, let's say, I know students nowadays very rich, but those days, the students, right, will always sign up for, prepaid, and then they'll pay, 5 ringgit a week, and then they use it up and then finish, and then after the next week cannot make calls, then they put another 5 ringgit in. So again, right, customer segments very important, and then you cannot be expecting a student to pay at the end of the month, use and then pay at the end of the month, right? Or pay a lot for the whole month, right? So again, it depends on what application you're doing and what problem you're trying to solve, and then the customer segments are always different, right? Now, when you identify your business and the segment, then you start identifying what the problem is. Or it can also come with the problem, then you identify the segments. But normally the problem will come with the segment, right? And then you have to identify your teammates, right? I'm assuming a lot of you have participated in this, and the new ones will basically find their teammates, and those who cannot find teammates will actually try to pitch and sell themselves and figure out who their teammates are. So having said that, then the where, which is the most crucial part in terms of where your revenue stream is coming from. Like, you cannot be doing charity and not expect some income from what you're doing, right? So you need to figure out who is going to pay for this, right? So of course, everybody is like, oh, let's do ads and let's get advertisers to come in, and then the advertisers will pay for the development of the app, right? So that's the freemium model. And then there's also the games that you see today, where the games are free, and then at the end of the day, you buy skins for the guns and the costumes, and then those are chargeable, and then that's your revenue stream, right? Of course, the cost structure also depends on how much you want to charge the customer. Like for instance, if you pay for Netflix like 16 ringgit a month, then you get a HD grade. Or if you want to pay 60 ringgit a month, then you get like 4 screens and full HD grade. So again, you need to figure out this cost structure, and this is the where, right? So basically, this is the WH questions. So based on the previous slide, this is basically a business model canvas, or BMC for short. Basically, it answers all the questions, and the reason why it's structured in a very bento-like cubicle kind of way is because they want to actually segregate your thought process in terms of the where, what, and why, right? So like key partnerships, these are, you know, who your stakeholders are. Like, do you need to use a cloud provider, or do you need to use a partner that does design, or a partner that has already clients existingly, right? Then your key activities, right? Your key activities in terms of what exactly that you want this business or this mobile app to do, and then your resources in terms of your internal guys, and then your cost structures and revenue. Because basically your cost structure is how much you're spending on all these key activities, key resources, and key partners. Those are your cost structures. And then once you start selling, your value proposition is basically all your stuff that you basically is your secret sauce. Basically, secret sauce is like if you go to an eatery and you like the sauce so much, and then you ask the owner, like, you know, can you share with me the recipe? Then he goes like, no, I cannot share because that's my secret sauce, right? Because that's the person's recipe to a success, right? So most of the time, a lot of mobile apps and a lot of players actually have a secret sauce. So those are your value propositions. And so the secret sauce is normally something that is very hard to replicate, or for that matter, nobody can replicate, because you're the only one who has the idea and you're the only one who can execute it, right? Then your customer relationships, and your customer segments, right? So what kind of relationships do you have with your customer, and what kind of segments do you have, like I mentioned, in terms of the mobile industry, and the segments that you have in terms of who your users are, right? Now, the channels is basically like, do you want to sell this app online, or do you want to sell this app via, you know, whether it's an email or whether it's the different channels in terms of whether it's web or mobile and stuff like that, right? So this is the part in terms of channels, right? And then whatever cost structure that you have on the left, basically will be minus off from your revenue. So basically, whatever cost that you spend, you need to generate more than you're spending, because if not, then you're basically not doing a business that is profitable, and then you're not sustainable, and then that's a whole issue altogether, right? So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to actually post your questions, and I'll get to them either at the end or when I see the questions pop up, and then if it's relevant, then I'll actually handle the questions at the same time. Or else we have a session at the end that you can actually ask questions, right? Okay. So basically, you guys can do this hands-on activity. I think the organizers of this hackathon will share these slides with you so that you can actually go through this step by step, right? So describe your problem, who your target users, key pain points, and then what existing solutions available. So this is an additional to what you have up there in terms of existing solutions available and why they are insufficient, right? So a lot of times when you realize hackathons and when you try to solve problems like this, you realize that a lot of times you don't do your research and find out what other people are doing. And so that's a big danger, because a lot of times you tend to be, you're building the same things that other people have built, right? So a lot of times when you want to build something new, you got to actually find out what's available in the market, right? And so how do you find out what's available in the market is that you need to figure out what is there in the market, and by simply Googling or finding existing solutions and finding what is insufficient, right? Because you don't want to be building something that someone has already built, because there's no differentiation from the edge. And of course, it's very difficult to do that. But that's the whole point of the hackathon, is to crunch your head and figure out ideas and figure out how exactly that you want to solve problems that are existing in this real world, and then try to find a solution and then try to make money out of it, right? So again, I always tell people that I'm always married to problems. And so a lot of times, a lot of people are actually married to solutions. And so the difference between being married to a problem and married to a solution is that it's like this, right? You buy something and you realize that you don't need it. But rather, you should be married to a problem where you find a problem, then you go and buy something, right? So a lot of people are like this, right? Like, for instance, you wanna drill a hole in the wall, right? So the problem is you wanna drill a wall. I mean, you wanna drill a hole in the wall, right? So the problem is you want a hole in the wall. But most of the time, people buy the drill even way before they want a hole in the wall, right? So So that's what I mean by married to problems and married to solutions. Yeah. So the key pain points is obviously it's always very close to heart when you have a problem that is your problem, right? And if the problem is your problem and you can find a solution for your problem, and then you sort of magnify that to other people having the same problem or same common problem that you have, and then you realize that, hey, there's actually other people like me out there that actually also has problems like this, and then you end up solving the problem for everyone, and then that becomes an idea, and then it translates into a business after that, right? Yeah. So obviously we won't have enough time to actually do this exercise, but you're welcome to actually draw out some prototypes and send me a message on LinkedIn. I'll be more than happy to look at your prototypes and your LinkedIn, and then basically describe things short and sweet. So there's this thing called KISS, which is KISS, keep it short and simple. Basically, if you're describing things in more than 2 sentences, then basically you've taken too long, right? So you need to describe things in terms of an elevator pitch. So an elevator pitch is basically, if you go in the lift, normally a lift of let's say 20 floors or 30 floors will probably take you less than 10 minutes. And so an elevator pitch will be the floor that you go on, you meet someone, and the floor you get off, and that's very fast, and you need to pitch something to someone, right? So you need to be very, very precise. You need to answer your WH questions in less than 1 or 2 sentences, and then you need to prioritize the top 3 or 5 features, right? And so it's not easy to do, but it requires a lot of intensive practice, and again, practice it in front of the mirror, and then record yourself, and then figure out whether it makes sense, and then send it to your friends. And if the way you communicate, the tone of your voice, and the words that come out from your mouth to another person doesn't make sense to someone else, then that's when you know that you need to tune it again, right? So there's going to be another 5 more slides and a video of things that I've done, just to give you an idea of how I married myself to problems and actually solved it and made it into a business, right? So take home from all this is that prototyping is essential. It's not a must-have, but it's a nice to have. And then start it very simple. Just do wireframes and iterate. So basically, iterate means doing things differently, but doing it over and over again and making sure you're getting it right all the time. And then from the business model canvas, you can actually translate the BMC into from your written ideas into a drawing from the BMC to the wireframe. And then of course, if you have more time, if anyone has seen Figma or InVision, these are the two I would say easy to use and industry standards. Figma is being used even in development today. And so learning a new tool like Figma and using YouTube to figure out how to use it is actually quite handy. And so Figma, in terms of design, can actually be translated straight to the front end in terms of user interface and user experience, right? And then you guys are encouraged to do to try out different techniques for your hackathon and your whatnot. This is a very short video. I'll just share it with you. I think some of you that I went to Penang has seen it before. But this was basically an idea that I had about 20 years ago. And it was a problem that I was solving for myself. And then it grew into a business. And then we had about, I think, 4,000 Facebook users that were buying from us.
Buletin Utama 2 Disember, saya Ramzan Muhammad Salfi, bersiaran bersama
Kehidupan digital memberi alternatif baru buat mereka yang ingin merubah norma hidup. Adrian Wong bukan usahawan biasa. Dia dah berkiat dalam arena digital hampir 2 dekad lamanya. Dia usahawan teknologi. Habis sahaja belajar di MMU, Adrian tidak membuang masa. Dia terus meneroka peluang dalam sektor digital. Macam-macam Adrian dah buat. Iklan animasi, pemasaran 3G dan juga penerbitan video. Adrian dah berpunya. Isterinya, Siti Nurzaini Yahya, rakan sekelas waktu di universiti dulu. Dua-dua alumni MMU. Nurzaini juga seorang usahawan teknologi. Bersama, mereka terokai pelbagai jenis perniagaan digital. Memang pasangan mantap lah. Ketika mengandung, Nurzaini tiba-tiba mengidam sushi. Nak sushi salmon pula tu. Jadi, Adrian selalu mencari stok salmon segar. Cuma jika dibeli dengan jumlah kecil, harganya mahal. Menerusi laman sosial, Adrian pun mencari rakan yang sudi untuk berkongsi membeli salmon secara pukal. Rupanya ramai juga yang berminat. Maka, lahirlah laman e-dagang menawarkan bahan mentah segar dengan harga berpatutan. Langkah Adrian dan Nurzaini tidak terhenti di situ. Bersama dengan pengalaman dalam sektor teknologi digital, mereka temui potensi besar dalam perniagaan laman e-dagang. Bukan itu saja, mereka juga berjaya hasilkan aplikasi, menghadiri konvensyen digital dan menjual produk mereka sendiri ke luar negara. Semuanya bermula di rumah. Kini, mereka tidak hanya menjual salmon. Laman e-dagang mereka juga menjual bahan mentah tempatan. Usaha Adrian dan Nurzaini memberi alternatif baru buat para pengusaha. Mereka kini tidak perlu bergantung sepenuhnya dengan orang tengah. Pelanggan juga boleh menikmati kemudahan aplikasi mereka ini, pesanan terus ke pintu rumah mereka. Terima kasih Adrian. Yang seronoknya, Adrian boleh meluangkan lebih masa bersama keluarganya. Ayuh terokai jaringan pemasaran digital.
So basically, this video literally entails the fact that when my wife was pregnant and she was eating sushi almost every other week, and it was burning a hole in my pocket, and so I had to find suppliers to actually fulfill that so that it was cheaper. And so when we started doing this, the kids in her stomach wanted to eat salmon, so I had to go and look for a cheaper source of salmon that was the same quality. And so I went to suppliers and bought the whole fish. And so it started off a 5 kilo fish, 4 to 5 kilo fish, and sharing it with friends and family. And then it got to a stage where the friends and family were like, Adrian, we still have some more fish in the fridge, right? We cannot finish the fish. And so then I started opening up on social media and on Facebook, and then everyone that I didn't know was interested, and then from there it grew into a business then, right? We still do salmon till today, but we've already done it offline, meaning to say we've got our regular customers and to be able to eat it fresh on our own, and to help other friends and family also buy at a cheaper rate. And so that's what we've been doing. And so the summary of that is basically my existing problem that I needed to fulfill, and I solved it, for myself, and I solved it for many other people, right? So there are about, I think, 5 worksheets before we end this. We've got another 27 minutes or so. No, sorry, 17 minutes. But very quickly, please, if you have the time, look into some of these worksheets. So basically, I've broken it down. So like, for instance, who your target customers are, whether it's individuals and stuff like that, and key pain points, right? So like, for instance, farmers struggling to sell their produce directly to consumers because of there's no digital platforms. Of course, now there's so many other digital platforms. Even Shopee now sells produce of farmers and whatever not. But the thing is, if you can identify the pain points, right? So like, for instance, in salmon, the pain points were very expensive. I couldn't get fresh, and I couldn't pay a cheaper price, right? So these are the key pain points that I needed to fulfill, right? And so I looked around and I didn't see any solutions, and then I decided to come and do it myself, right? So these are the things that you need to be married to the problem, and then you can easily find a solution for it. And then worksheet number 2 is when you're done with identifying it, you can actually start drawing. And so when you start drawing it, again, you need to identify what is your main functionalities, right? So like, for instance, a mobile app that you want to do, say, for farmers is you would like to enable farmers to be able to sell online to disintermediate the middleman. So that's one sentence, right? Or like for Airbnb is like to enable home users to actually make more money and to meet more friends, right? So that's maybe one sentence. So like for instance, Jom Salmon would be to disintermediate the middleman and to obtain fresh produce from suppliers and to use the internet without keeping stock, right? Something like that. Okay. Then you need to prioritize your key features. Try not to do try not to throw prices. I mean, a lot of times, a lot of places they tend to charge very cheap, and then you realize that you cannot sustain unless you sell a lot of something, right? So try not to have a key feature or a functionality being I'm the cheapest around, right? Or I'm cheaper than US. What you want to do is obviously do better than what they have, and then try to fight in terms of pricing, like if they are charging like $20, then you should charge $20 as well because you have ABC and XYZ, right? Not just because I want to sell it at $5 because I'm cheaper and I can give it out for cheaper kind of thing. So try not to do that, right? Then there's also your audience, right? Who do you test it with? Of course, friends and family is the easiest lah. You just send a Google form and then you tell them like, can you please fill in the survey? And then sometimes friends and family can be a bit biased. They can say, oh yeah, very nice. I love your application. I will use it. But then again, they're friends and family, right? So they'll tell you nice and sweet things, right? So the best people to actually try out a prototype is actually normally your customers. And so what I did was when I sold to my friends and family, I would normally get feedback from them and say like, what do you think of this? What do you think of the packaging? Can we do better? But you don't have to like, oh, can I do a survey with you? No. It's like you just slip it into like, hi, how are you? Dah makan ke belum? Then you start saying like, oh, how was the fish the other day? Then you mentally take note of what they say rather than you give them a questionnaire, right? So that's your customers. Then yeah, so that's the second point actually, is this product is to use to solve your problem, right? So there's a lot of ways of asking this question rather than making them feel that you're doing a survey, right? And then things like if they go like, oh, I don't really like it because the fish, some of them came without the vacuum pack and then there's some water inside, then you take those feedback and then you go back and reiterate your product, right? And then you go like, oh, I need to figure out the packaging. I need to put in a layer of absorbent tissue so that there's no water in the packaging. And then I need to make sure that when I vacuum pack the stuff, the fish is tightly sealed so that there's no bacteria going in and stuff like that, right? And so some of the challenges that you face, you need to take note, and then if you cannot really solve them internally, then that's when you reach out to other people and then you go like, hey, you've been doing this in your industry for so long. What do you do when you face challenges, right? Of course, this number 4 is the BMC, and the BMC is basically I've already gone through, so you can actually do a BMC by yourself. You can download. I think there are some website forms and all that you can actually also fill in and then generate the BMC. But there are a lot of free business model canvas that you can download in PDF and then print out and start filling. There's a whole a lot of times accelerator programs actually organize this kind of courses in terms of BMC because excuse me, the BMC also is quite a iterative thing, meaning to say there's no one canvas that is accurate, because every time when you do a survey, then you come back to the drawing board. That's why they say come back to the drawing board. So this is the drawing board lah, basically. So when you have a canvas, then you erase whatever that you've learned from the customer, then you come back to the drawing board, then you start filling in the business model canvas again. So you can never have one business canvas that is stuck in stone or carved in stone, right? Yeah, so the revenue and then the minus cost structure. Then the last one is basically, which is very important also for the hackathon, also for the fact that you want to turn your prototypes into a business, is basically you need to know how to pitch. I always tell people that pitching is not something that you're born with, is an art. It's like public speaking. It's not as easy as public speaking because you need to be very concise. And so when you have an idea, it will always remain an idea unless you communicate it with someone else. And so in order for you to communicate it with someone else, you need to be able to explain your secret sauce or your uniqueness. And then you need to practice an elevator pitch, right? So if you Google, say, Airbnb elevator pitch Y Combinator, I think Y Combinator is a very good accelerator program on YouTube that you can actually watch all the famous brands that you have right now, like Airbnb and stuff like that, who did their first pitches to Y Combinator. And Y Combinator is an accelerator program that also raises funds, right? Y as in not WHY, Y as in letter Y Combinator, right? And so this pitching, I think it's a whole chapter on its own. But I won't go so deep in it. I'll just give you some tips in terms of pitching, right? So if you see the example, our solution connects farmers directly to consumers, offering fresh, affordable food while ensuring farmers receive fair pricing. Unlike traditional marketplaces, we provide a commission-free direct orders. You see, 2 lines, 2 sentences, direct to the point. No, no going around the bush or anything, just direct, right? And if you read this often enough, or you watch YouTube pitches often enough, you realize that you can actually do a very good pitch, and you can actually work on it and keep improving on it, right? So what I normally do in most hackathons that I used to join and what I mentor normally is that this is actually quite crucial because it's basically communicating your idea to someone even without slides and making sure that person understands. And so in order to come to this conclusion of these 2 lines, you need to obviously reword the lines and the words that you choose to be very precise. And if you can do it in 30 seconds or less, then and the other person understanding you, then you've basically made your pitch, right? So I would really advise you to just go to YouTube and just search for pitch and Y Combinator, and then just watch all the other people, giving a pitch, right? And then after you have a prototype, basically you need to do user testing. User testing is basically just giving it out to everyone to test. And then once everyone tested it already, I think there's some analytics, or you can ask them to click or comment and whatever not, then you improve your prototype. All right, that's my LinkedIn. Feel free to connect. Don't follow, because then you cannot message me. Connect and then message me if you have any questions throughout the hackathon. Be happy to guide you and see whether we can make your pictures and as well as your prototypes better. All the best, guys. I think the Q&A is here. I'll pass it on to the organizers.
Thank you, Mr. Adrian, for your insightful sharing on today's topic. Now, it's time for our Q&A session. To all participants, you can submit your questions through the Padlet provided. The QR code is displayed on the screen, and the link has been shared in the chat box. Don't hesitate to share your questions.
To make sure everyone's questions are addressed during the Q&A session, support the questions you are most interested in by giving them a like. We will be choosing the questions with the most likes, so be sure to participate.
Okay, it seems that we have a lot of questions from our participants.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to our first question first. Usually, hackathons focus on both business and technical aspects. For the business part, what shall we talk about that can specifically attract the industry, such business sustainability, marketing, etc.? What does the industry/judges value the most? Mr. Adrian, what do you think of this question?
Which question is this?
This one is the one that's highlighted in
Oh,
yellow.
in yellow.
currently.
Okay, I see it. Okay. Yeah. So basically, the business sustainability and marketing is always a challenging thing for technical guys. And so it's always nice to join a hackathon with a business person, or find a colleague, or a classmate that you know who's doing business. And I always encourage this among hackathon participants, because you never know, because at the end of the day, when you start a startup or you start a company, the business guy that you actually met in university will be the guy that is doing either your finance or your marketing or your business development, right? But to answer your question very simply, the business part of it is normally dollars and cents. Basically your cost and your revenue. And also the business side of it is you talk about how many users, and then from the number of users, it always translates to the number of paying users, and the paying users translates to the revenue, right? And also, the other part, which I always call a 360 in terms of marketing and business, is that you need to figure out who your stakeholders are. And if you can figure out who your stakeholders are, then you can target your marketing towards those stakeholders. Like, give you an example. If you do a mobile app or a content app for kids, you're not going to do marketing to the kids because you cannot reach the kids. You need to do marketing to the parents because the parents need to pay for the kids, right? So when you say what does the industry or judges value the most, I think most of the time the judges like to see a very 360. So that means to say your technical has to be there, your pitch has to be there, and then the business side, like I mentioned just now, basically your cost revenue. If you go like, oh, I need to do this so that this app and the app actually is funded by sponsors, then that's very weak law, because normally sponsors will only come when you have like 1 million, 2 million eyeballs, right? But if you think about mobile apps and maybe platform apps or maybe financial apps, that is the theme for this hackathon, then you need to look in terms of transactional, right? Transactional in the sense that if you do an app and if there's a paying customer, what is the transaction percentage that you will take out of each transaction? Of course, if you take 20% and the judge is from the industry, then he will say, yeah, you know, who are you taking 20% from? But if you take like 0.1%, I mean, just give you an example, right? Don't mark my words, right? If you take like, 0.5% or 1%, because Visa and MasterCard only takes 3%. So if you take 20%, then you're trying to say that you're better than MasterCard and Visa, right? So that's not possible either. So you need to know the market and you need to know the industry well enough for fintech and stuff. I think there are two teams, right? Fintech and something else. I forgot.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Adrian, for your clear and insightful response. Now, let us move on to our next question. Sometimes after brainstorming, we only can think of some existing solutions. From your experience, how can we stand out from them?
Yeah. So for me, when I'm lack of an idea after brainstorming with the teammates, normally you need to think out of the box. And so how do you think out of the box is you need to talk to people. If you stay within your teammates and your teammates are all IT, right, then you basically need to go out and then talk to people, right? So if, like, let's say you have an idea but you don't know whether it works, then you can also obviously Google and ChatGPT and say, I have this idea, and then these are the stakeholders. What are the existing apps that people have built, right? And then look around. Normally the stuff that are viral, like for instance, I quite like this hackathon that was being run. I can't remember in which country, where basically it was a phone and a computer, and the phone had an AI sales agent calling on behalf of a human to book a hotel, right? And then they realized that they were both AI agents, and then they started talking in their own, 0 and 1 languages. I mean, of course, the idea was very cute. I'll send you the link. You can share it out. But the idea was basically capturing people's imagination. It was actually a very simple idea, but the solution and the execution was very nice. Again, talk to a lot of people. Don't stay in your cocoon. Go out, see things, observe, and then if you can even drop a call message or add the fintech. So like for instance, if it's fintech in terms of the hackathon, you can go on LinkedIn or in Facebook or whatever social media, and then just type your fintech and then just add all the fintech peoples in the market, or just connect with as many people on LinkedIn and then see what they are doing, right? And then you might get an idea from there, right?
Wow, Mr. Adrian, that was some very helpful advice. Now, let's move on to our next question. Hi, sir. Which customer group has the highest potential for generating revenue?
Which customer group? Yeah, so there's no one and hard or fast rule for this. You basically need to, so the business model canvas actually has identity, where you identify the first customer, and the way to identify the first customer is always selling it to the first customer. So the first customer can be your friend and family, right? And then that's when you start figuring out who can actually buy the most and the highest margin, right? Because sometimes different customers have different abilities to pay and not to pay, right? So it really depends at the end of the day what the product is, and obviously depending on what the product is, then only you can find your customers. Because at the end of the day, also you can never know who your best customer is, right? For instance, give you an example. In the mobile games industry, there is a term called whales as in ikan paus, right? And so I'm not asking you to gamble or anything, but it's a very known industry where the richest players who have the most money will pay to win, right? Now, when I say pay to win, obviously everybody's not rich. You can spend somewhere between 100 ringgit to buy, say, things on the game, right? But some people can spend, say, 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 a month, right? So how do you know whether that one customer will spend 10,000, or you have 10,000 customers spending 1 ringgit, right? So you don't know until you start selling it, right? Yeah. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Mr. Adrian, for this valuable input. Next, let's keep the discussion going on. For the AI domain, in the first case study on self-learning trading strategies, how should we approach the prototype? Based on my understanding and knowledge, this case study is somewhat different in nature from the others. It focuses more on data analytic and machine learning algorithm-based models. How would Mr. Adrian approach this question?
So you have to understand I've actually shared the link where the two AI agents talk to each other. You can watch it later, right? So basically, the AI domain has to go back to the sponsors, and so the sponsors, and if I'm not mistaken, is either Securities Commission or banking sponsors. So you have to understand where they're coming from in terms of building this case study, right? So again, even though it's focused on data analytics and machine learning algorithms, you need to figure out where your data is coming from, right? And then you need to figure out what kind of machine learning algorithms you want to use, right? So a good place to start off is actually Kaggle. Kaggle.com actually has a lot of challenges there, that a lot of data is already uploaded onto their servers and anonymized, right? So trading strategies, number one, if you can figure out and you can talk to someone that does trading. I'm not sure whether this trading is Forex or futures or gold or whatever not, right? And then you need to figure out what their pain points are, right? So how do you self-learn trading strategies? I know for a fact that trading has like the robo traders and stuff like that. So I'm not sure what it means by self-learning trading strategy. So is it are you learning the fundamentals? Are you building a site like for education to teach people? Are you gamifying the learning? How do you teach self-learners, right? So I'm not so sure of this first case, but if you drop me a message, I think I'll follow up with you in terms of what the team and the whole domain is. But again, you need to figure out who your existing stakeholders are. Are you doing the case for 12-year-olds, 5-year-olds? Are you doing it for teenagers or adults, right? Then are you doing it free? Those are your who, right? And if you focus so much on the data and not the overall big picture, you need to figure out of course your cost structure. What's your secret sauce, right? Why you and not someone else that can do it, right? So these are the same things that go back to the business model canvas at the end of the day. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Adrian, for the helping. And we actually, for this domain, we also have another workshop for workshop 3, which is from data to solutions. The participant may also join that workshop to know more about the AI domain.
Cool.
All right, for the outcome, let's go to our next question. How do you evaluate an idea is a good one?
So as I shared Airbnb, right? They went from renting the room or their apartment to 3 people making $80 a night to going to a conference and telling everybody about it, and then nobody believed them. No, there was only 2 bookings, right? And then they went to New York and then started taking pictures, and then went to all the VCs and they didn't want to give them money. And so there is no definition. Okay, there obviously is a definition of good, but your good and my good is different, right? So, and then your idea may be good for you, may be not good for me. But what I'm trying to say is that there is no idea that is good until you get a first paying customer that is not your family or friend. Does that make any sense to you? So meaning to say, you can have a million ideas, right? And then the guy beside you can also have the same million ideas. And then you don't execute on any of the ideas. You just talk about it. Like, I got an idea, right? I just want to do this. Like, do lah, you don't talk about it, right? Just do and then put it out and then get someone to pay for it, right? Don't get your brother or your father or mother, And the idea will always be an idea until someone pays you money. And the someone that pays you money is the someone that doesn't even know you, right? That you manage to convince him or her to part with his money, right? And that is when you know you have an idea. But that's just your first customer, right? Then you need to hit 10 customers, 100 customers, then 1,000 customers, right? But again, when you're in a hackathon, you're not expecting someone to pay for your idea. What you need is you need to validate the idea. So if you can get a paying customer in a hackathon, I tell you, the judges will be amazed. Like, I got this idea and I did this idea and then someone paid me for it, right? It's like, hello, it's like your idea is not even out the door as a product and then someone pay you for it, right? So again, don't be, what they say, shops in the jago kampung. Don't pat yourself in the back and say, this is a good idea, and then pat all your colleagues and your teammates and right. Always find a stakeholder and get them to buy or buy in, not buy, but buy in and say that, yeah, this is a good product, this is something that I want. But don't just lip service it, that person has to be using it, or buying it and eating it or something like that, right? So yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Adrian. I totally agree with you on that one. Moving on, our next question is, good evening, sir. How can I done all the prototype if I join solo in hackathon? Sometimes I get stuck while brainstorming.
Yeah. So my advice is always don't join things alone. Don't work in silos or don't work solo. But if you have to work in silo, work in solo, I think there are a few channels that you can actually connect with other participants. So like all the LinkedIn and the Facebook posts, right? And if you're joining this solo, there's another 200, 300 participants in the list that is joining this chat today. You can just take down their emails or whatever, not, and then just send them your prototype and say, hey, I'm a solo, teammate, and I just need to bounce off some ideas with you. So the people that join this hackathon, or the organizers, will be more than happy to look at it, even though you're a solo participant. But my advice to you is, if you can and you have the ability to not join this solo, I think some of the hackathons have Discord groups where there's one channel which allows for you to connect with other participants, and those who are joining solo can actually just collaborate and join as a team, because when you participate as a team, it'd be nice,
Thank you, Mr. Adrian. That was a great answer. Due to some time constraints, we will now proceed with our final question of the session. The pitching time matters. In your opinion, how should we allocate the time for the problem statement, technical part, conceptual flow, tech stacks, etc., business, market, strategy, etc., and demonstration? Mr. Adrian, what do you think of this inquiry?
Okay, so before I answer this question, I think to be honest, I can actually answer the rest of the questions by logging into this page. So if you don't mind sharing this page with me, I will answer the questions that were not answered during this session. So the pitching, basically, I think the allocation of time, there's also allocation of marks. And so the allocation of marks sometimes go from technical to business to, so basically, if you look at the marks and where the marks go, then that's when you allocate your time. So if, let's say, it's 20, 30, 10, 10, 10, then you know, basically, if it's a 5-minute thing, then you just divide. But again, if it's a more technical solution kind of problem statement, then you should focus it on your technical. I think the conceptual flows and the tech stack nowadays not so crucial. I think more the presentation, as well as the finished product, if you can, and then don't go too much into the problem statement. Just identify one or two and then go straight into the features. And then nowadays, I think the hackathon, again, are very dependent on the judges also. But if you know the list of judges and their names, then you can Google their background and see what their background is. So if it's a marketing person, then you basically talk more marketing stuff and strategy. And then, of course, the demonstration, whether or not it's a finished product or a polished product, you just need to show a demonstration so that it's not so conceptualized and idea-based. And then you can also have the business side in terms of how to go to market, in terms of the strategy, and then how much revenue and cost that you want to get from it all.
Thank you, Mr. Adrian, for answering the questions from our participants. Again, participants, if you still have any more questions, you may scan the QR code and go to the panel and ask, as Mr. Adrian will be helpful and answer them all. We sincerely hope that all participants have gained valuable insights into transforming ideas into viable business solutions through prototyping. Your contributions to Workshop 1, Prototyping 101, Transforming Ideas into Business Realities, are greatly appreciated.
We are truly grateful to have each and every one of you here today. As we wrap up this session, we kindly ask all our participants to turn on their video cameras for a group photo. You have 1 minute to get ready.
Okay, everyone, you may download the virtual background sent in the chat box now, and you may open your cameras and show off your beautiful and handsome faces to Mr. Adrian, so that he can know that you have been diligently supporting him throughout this workshop.
Yes, don't be shy. We'll love to see your lovely smiling faces. We highly recommend that you use the virtual background provided by our team, as mentioned by Jason.
Yeah, there's no need to be shy, as everyone here will be opening their cameras alongside us. All right, guys, come on. You can there's still time left for you all to open your cameras.
Yes, please join this photography session together.
Maybe the judges would consider for extra marks if you open your camera now. We can do it as proof of your attendance. Who knows? You should open your camera now. Just in case, you never know these things. All right, it seems that there have been quite a lot of you who have opened your cameras. Now I would like to invite everyone to do the VHAX sign. First, you raise your left hand with a V or a peace sign, and then with your right hand, with your index finger pointing out, put it behind the V here to form our VHAX sign. Remember that two of your fingernails of the V is facing to the camera. Okay, this is our VHAX sign.
I'll repeat it again. First, left hand with the V and right hand with the index finger. Now that I've seen most of you all have opened your camera, so I'll pass the stage to my team.
Okay, now page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Five. 6. 7. 8. 9. 10. Yep, I think
All right, thank you everyone for your cooperation. We have an exciting announcement. VHAC 2025 has another amazing workshop in store at 8 p.m. on the 14th of March. The workshop is titled FinTech and Blockchain, Shaping the Future of Finance. Don't miss this opportunity as the workshop covers one of the key domains for VHAC 2025.
Be sure to mark your calendars and join us on Cisco WebEx by registering through the link provided in the chat box or by scanning the QR code displayed on the screen. For USM students, do take note that MyCSD is provided as well.
Dear participants, please fill out the attendance and feedback form by clicking the link provided in the chat box or by scanning the QR code displayed on the screen. To all USM students, be sure to fill out this form to qualify for MyCSD. The attendance and feedback form will only be available for the next 15 minutes. We also appreciate your feedback as it will help us improve future events. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude today's session, we want to express our sincere gratitude for your enthusiastic participation. Sorry.
抢我过
A
啦，
big
第
thank you to
可
Mr.
以
A. Sorry, that for the participant, there
怎
might
么
be someone
样？
who's opening their scan their mic.
可能你要用电脑过，电脑可能会好过一点，
可能吧。
手机比较小。然后明天你就是那个红红冒星的那个
Sorry,
人。
there might be a participant who accidentally opened their microphone. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude today's session, we want to express our sincere gratitude for your enthusiastic participation. A big thank you to Mr. Adrian for his insightful contributions. I am sure we have all gained valuable knowledge from his sharing session.
Unfortunately, this marks the end of this workshop. However, be sure to stay tuned for our upcoming events. For more updates, be sure to follow VHAC 2025's social media accounts.
Thank you, everyone. Until next time, have a great day. Bye-bye.